So we'll talk everything about like how food affects your body, how we can find good food, and then how we can structure how we use that food to give us the best health. Well, let's get started. How to feed your muscles and your mind. So we want not just body health, but we also want to have good mental health and clarity. So we're going to talk about how to fuel our energy, our focus, and healing. And then we'll also talk about what is the real story. It's not just counting calories. You've probably heard of people doing macro diets or things like that. And their focus is not at all on how well their body's healing and being nourished. It's just simply on how much energy is coming in. Then, have you ever eaten healthy, but you still feel exhausted or foggy? So I know a lot of people that eat healthy, but they still are lacking in the nutrients that they need for their body to run properly. So we'll talk about all of those aspects of nutrition as well. I've been in practice for over 20 years and been teaching classes like this the whole time. It's my passion. I love learning and then sharing that knowledge with other people and helping them learn how to optimize their health as well. We're going to talk about a few examples of people that I've worked with and how what I've done has helped them. But we work with personalized functional medicine. We do customized supplement recommendations. And on the chiropractic side of things, that's what we talked about last month. So you can see the video for that if you're interested. We do QSM3, which is for general spinal alignment and balance, and then AMIT or AMIT, which is advanced muscle integration, to turn muscles back on when they've been neurologically turned off or inhibited. This is Shauna. She has experienced quite a few changes with what we've done. And so her story was really cool. She just was feeling really tired. She was trying to have and sustain healthy pregnancies and not having success. So her energy went from a 3 to a 7. She felt like her sleep and her energy was just restored after years of fatigue. And then we really taught her how to fix the root problem, not just cover it up. We're not just using a quick stimulant or supplement to help increase energy, but to get the cells to heal and then they produce the energy. For her, she says it's given me more energy and the ability to be a better mom, and she believes it's quite probably the reason that she has a second living child, which is really cool. It really made a difference for her. And then she says it's worth it if you're ready to do the work and want true healing instead of a quick fix. Jerry B, he noticed that he had more regular bowel movements even within just a week of working with me, and his blood sugars dropped. He was able to lose 20 pounds in the first month, and then he didn't need cholesterol medications anymore. And so his energy went from a 5 to an 8. He had better stamina, strength, and endurance, which is important because he's outside working physically every day. And his labs might improve naturally. So he said that you'll understand your body better and see positive results. And then finally, Stephen, he had been experiencing 10 years of back pain, and he was excited that now he can be active with his kids again. And his pain dropped from a 9 down to a 1 or 2. And his migraines went from being monthly to just a few a year, which is a massive change. And his pain reduced, his sleep improved, and his migraine frequency dropped. And he said Dr. Grover's thorough and detail-oriented, and he highly recommends. Lindsay, she said that it just feels good to have a healthy working gut, and when she feels well, she feels well. So that's something that she started learning as we worked with her. And when she doesn't, she knows that she feels more sluggish and life is harder. Her energy was already decent, but it went from a 7 to a 10. And then her digestion, mood, and weight improved, and her thyroid normalized. And also stable blood sugar just changed everything for her. And she definitely feels like it was worth it, and it worked. Wendy learned that she can do hard things because it's not this simple, easy lifestyle to not take care of your body. We want to ignore things that are inconvenient. And so she learned how to take that hard step into taking better care of herself and really invest in it, because it is an investment, but then it pays off. So she had better sleep, her weight reduced, and her labs were much better. And she recognizes it's a journey, but it was worth it. Some common threads throughout this is, even though they're different stories, they have the same outcome. If we support our body, then it can heal through nourishment. We have more energy, reduced pains, increased sleep, and increased digestion and better hope. And food can be a powerful medicine when it's applied the right way. So really the message today is eat real food all the time. Now we can end the class and go home. What you'll learn today is why feeling better does not equal healing. A lot of people tell me about things they do to feel better. It's like, oh, I did this and I felt so much better. But now they're still coming to me with problems. So it didn't last. It wasn't a lasting change, and it wasn't really supporting the natural way that our body works. And so they got a temporary improvement, but it didn't really fix anything in the long run. So we'll talk about the 5 universal food principles, how food shapes hormones, and the smart use of supplements, and then some simple strategies to sustain your energy and focus. So we talked about this briefly, but basically you have 2 meals and they have the same calories but different nutrients. And so are they really equal for your health? And not at all. Some of the key differences are the nutrient density and metabolic signaling that those calories provide your body. So nutrient density is, you have 500 calories of something, but if it's super refined and processed, it's going to be empty of a lot of nutrients and not really provide your body with what it needs. There are a lot of doctors now calling this being overfed but undernourished. And that happens a lot in our society. So we need really nutrient-dense foods, and that affects our metabolic signaling. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but essentially it's what is that food telling your body to do once it enters your body and it's absorbed. Because 2 foods can have the same calories, but one will tell your body to hold on to energy and gain weight, and another one can tell you to release energy and to lose weight. So it's important to get the right balance of those. So what really matters? What does our body do with that food? So if we look at the whole digestive tract, it starts in the mouth and comes through in the liver and pancreas and stomach and gallbladder, and all of that works on it. And then we get it into the small intestine where we absorb nutrients, and then into the large intestine where it mixes in with other bacteria and other things that help create other nutrients for us. So it's a lot more dynamic than just simply food comes in and calories, stick with us or go out. So the calories are really just math, and chemistry is where we start looking at the nourishment and how it's impacting our body, and also how we absorb those nutrients is really important. These are the small cells in the digestive tract. That's where we get the nutrients to actually get into the bloodstream. So that's where it really matters if that area is working properly. With things like SIBO, leaky gut, all those, that means there's some kind of a breakdown in that level of how we absorb nutrients. And so if that's absorption's not working, you can put all the calories through you want and you're still not absorbing nutrients. So how well your body can process and absorb the nutrients is also a major aspect of how nutrition is working for you. We often have people talk about detox and, oh, I did this detox and I felt so good at first, or while I was doing it and then it all went away. That's because there are a lot of factors involved with detox, and in a lot of cases, detoxes will just create more stress for the body. And in the long run, that is not what our bodies need. So we have a certain amount of threat or stress that we can handle on a consistent basis. And if we are constantly overflowing our bucket of how much stress and threat we can handle, then that causes more problems. So for some people, you can have 3 people, they do a detox. One of them feels great. Another one feels worse. Another one's like, yeah, it didn't do anything for me. And so it's really not addressing the underlying needs. And there's so many other factors with how they responded to that. The biggest thing is you want to support your cells and they clean out themselves. So in some cases, there may be small amounts of detox helps that we would use, but in most cases, your body's already built for that. And if we support it on the right level, it will do it at the rate that it can handle healthily, on a good basis. So an example is if you do something that really creates a lot of stress for your body, then it's going to create more fight or flight. Then you have a cortisol release that's going to, again, reinforce that fight or flight state. It changes how your body uses nutrients and uses energy, because now it's just trying to survive rather than absorb and heal optimally. And then you get temporary energy from that via the cortisol, the blood sugar releases, and the adrenaline, but then you crash. And when we do that, on a consistent basis, our bodies never have a chance to catch up. And so a lot of detox systems cause that fight or flight state because you're severely restricting nutrients or abnormally increasing other things beyond what our body normally uses them at. And that is stressful to our body. So it can create that type of reaction. So you want to stop trying to clean everything out and just support your cells, and then they'll help you clean out at a rate that they can handle. The overconfident patient. We hear lots of stories every day. It's kind of fun, but we still share ideas, and people don't even listen to what we say, and then they share what they're doing. And, it's just another theory or philosophy of, oh, I've got this. And, they didn't really think about it. And so hopefully today we can really think about what we're learning and keep an open mind so we can look at what can be useful and not just assume that we already know it. I know that I tend to be that way. I try not to be, but I know everything. I don't, but I still try and keep an open mind when I realize I'm doing that and just learn from other people's experiences too. What are the essential components that we need in each meal? The goal is that we want to fuel the body, the processes that have to help our body run. We need to build tissue and create structure. We need to repair things that are broken and have a balance of all of that. So it's this, dance that's constantly going. And so we're going to talk about 5 principles that will apply to everybody, regardless of what kind of diet, or philosophy they want to follow. These are the essential elements of each meal, essentially, that you want to incorporate. First up, we need to build our structure. So protein is what does that. So we've heard of amino acids. So there are the 9 essential amino acids, which are basically protein structures, little pieces of protein that we can't make for ourselves. So that means it's essential that we get them through the diet. The other amino acids we can combine from the essential amino acids and find other ways to get them. So all animal products contain these proteins and amino acids. Some plants or combinations of plants will provide these for you, but then you have to watch out for other imbalances that can happen when you try and supply all of your nutrient needs through just plants. So for example, a lot of people try and get protein simply through eating grains or nuts and seeds, but then you're getting a lot of other carbohydrates along with that, and you create other imbalances along with that. Plus, what you're missing out on with that is with the protein sources from animal proteins, you can get healthy fats along with those. So as long as you're eating healthy protein sources, then you also get the healthy fats with it, and we need those as well. So what else do we need in a meal? We need non-starchy vegetables. So the more color, the better. The color comes from compounds called polyphenols, and those are very important for our body and our chemistry. They help our gut and our microbiome to also produce their byproducts, which are very healthy and important for us. And so we want to make sure we're having a mixture of things and a variety of things, not always the same things over and over. It's beneficial to have both cooked and raw vegetables, because when you cook them, it breaks down certain nutrients, but it makes other nutrients more available, and vice versa. So for example, vitamin C is very sensitive to heat, so it will break down if you cook it, but then you'll get more vitamin A by cooking it. So there's a good reason to do them both ways. You get minerals from them, antioxidants. Again, it's fuel for your microbiome. You get prebiotics in the form of soluble and insoluble fibers. And really the root of our health is our gut, and the root of that is having a wide variety of different plant foods. So in a week, we want to eat 30 or more different plant foods. And that includes all of your vegetables, cruciferous and leafy greens, and all the others, the root vegetables. It includes all types of fruits. It includes all of your nuts and seeds, your herbs and seasonings. So a couple of simple hacks that you can do is if you're having a cereal type of a thing, you can just have a mixture of nuts and seeds and herbs and seasonings. You just throw a bunch of that on, and it already has 20 different things in it. And if you use that regularly, that will help maintain your gut microbiome. You can use a variety of different grains, so don't get stuck eating the same ones over and over, but there's a lot of different grains you can use. We want, again, the 30 or more different plant foods per week. So, and plants especially have things that help us detox and help our cells clean themselves out. So that's another purpose that they have. So that's our plants, and then our quality carbs. Obviously, there's some overlap with the other categories, but I put them in their own specific category for the way that we think about the meal. We want to get carbohydrates to fuel our cells with energy. So our body runs on energy. If we're just eating protein and non-starchy vegetables all the time, we don't get energy. We need to have that actual energy, the glucose, the carbohydrates. And so every cell in our body, especially the brain and the kidneys, needs carbs. In fact, the brain and kidneys only use carbs. So we don't ever want to restrict them completely. Healthy thyroid hormone production and utilization requires carbs. I can run a blood panel of someone and look at their thyroid numbers, and if they've been fasting or being keto or doing any of those strategies, it shows up on their thyroid numbers, and they don't have enough thyroid hormone in the first place, plus they don't convert what they do have into the active form appropriately without adequate carbs. They have to have those carbs. So you can see massive changes in hormones if someone is not managing their carbs properly. Also, they support adrenal stability. If you're not having enough carbs, then your body is going to use as much of the energy as you do have, and then it produces cortisol to try and release more carbohydrates stored in your tissues. If that runs out, then you have to use adrenaline, and it's still just trying to get energy some way or another. And so it really hammers your adrenals. And some people metabolically can manage that okay. Like if they were on, say, like a carnivore diet or something, some people can very effectively convert that protein into carbohydrates and then burn the carbohydrate. Some people can't. In fact, most people can't. So that's why it doesn't work for everybody. And there are lots of other issues with that approach anyways, but that's just one example of one of the concerns with it. Sweet potatoes, yams, unrefined and unprocessed grains, cooked. So you don't want the lectins in an uncooked form or even stronger, so you have to make sure you cook everything thoroughly. It always makes me laugh when I look at like the instructions on like a common one is steel cut oats, and they say cook it 5 to 7 minutes. No, cook it at least 20 to 25 minutes. Make sure it's thoroughly cooked. The grain will absorb all the water, and then it opens up and you can tell that it's cooked. So you don't want them to still be chewy or, have other texture like that. So you want unrefined, unprocessed grains, winter squash, fruit. Fruit is an okay source of carbs, but you don't want to rely on it because too much fruit has high levels of fructose, and that can create other imbalances. Plus, it doesn't last in your system very long. It tends to create more of a quick spike and then it's gone. Whereas like a hearty meal with lots of grains or potatoes or yams or something is gonna stick to the ribs, as they say, and give you more energy longer term. All right, so we can't leave out water. So I include it in recommended meal planning. A lot of people just don't have good energy because they aren't drinking enough water. They've done studies on energy, on sleep, on detox, on weight loss. All of it improves if you drink enough water. Kidney health, of course, all of that stuff, hormones. So water moves nutrients, it supports your energy, helps you support your hormones and your electrical conduction, your detox, building your body. All of that requires that medium of water. So in any chemical reaction, it needs water as the medium, whether it's in your body or in a lab test tube, you have to have water. So you need about half of your body weight in ounces or in pounds in ounces of water per day. So again, if you're like 180 pounds, then you'd want like 90 ounces per day. And the timing of that is important. If you're going to have a meal, you don't want to dilute your stomach acid. So can you still have water with your meal? Yes. But like 8 ounces, like you don't need to guzzle like 15 to 20 ounces and catch up on your water and take it your meals. That's not a good idea. So you also typically don't want to drink it all right before bed, unless you have a really big bladder and you're okay with that. Some people might. And so you want to get a majority of the larger amounts of water in earlier in the day. Try and not like hyperload that when you're eating, but then try and get in, big amounts of water earlier. How much inflammation you have is a major element of how fast your body's going to want to get rid of the toxins that are flushed out with the water. So I have a lot of clients that are like, oh, I drink all this water and I have to go to the bathroom all the time. Number one, are you sipping water? Yep, I'm sipping it constantly. Well, then you're going to be peeing constantly. Another one is how much detox is your body trying to handle and manage, how much inflammation is in your bladder and your urinary tract and the kidneys, because that's going to also make you have to go more often. So it's not necessarily a bad thing just because you drink more water and you have to go to the bathroom more. In some cases it's good, but you can try, consolidating your water intake to more, again, those bigger times between meals and snacks. And then that could potentially make it so that you have more bigger times that you just have to go to the bathroom and just a few times instead of spreading it out. And then over time, as your body gets healthier, it should be less of an issue. And you can just hold it until you're ready to go to the bathroom. And then, so the timing of when you eat is also important. We don't just want to always be eating because that stacks your insulin responses. And now your body doesn't know how to manage your blood sugar responses and how to use that energy. So we need specific times of eating, typically separated by about 2.5 to 3 hours. Some people are really sensitive to if their blood sugar starts to drop too much, and so they need to keep that stable level, especially if they have autoimmune conditions or other things that are making it harder for their body to manage the hormones and how they're using blood sugar, then they're going to be more sensitive to that. So they may need to eat a meal, and you want to make sure that first meal is always within 45 minutes to an hour after waking, because otherwise you're burning cortisol from fasting overnight and you're still doing that in the morning. That's why they call it the break fast, breakfast. And so then that lets your body's production of cortisol to start to drop, so that you can bring up your blood sugar through eating instead of through the cortisol. And that gives your adrenals a rest. We don't want to constantly stress our adrenals. You've probably heard of adrenal fatigue or burnout. So we want to give them a signal that they can calm down and rest as soon as we can in the morning. And then about every 2.5 to 3 hours throughout the day, you start to develop a sense of when your blood sugar is starting to drop, and manage that. You want to get to where you can preemptively start to eat something before you start to feel symptoms from low blood sugar. That's the ideal, because as soon as that starts to drop, that triggers a cascade of other changes in your body that can lead to inflammation and other cells becoming more stressed and increase that threat response in your body. So we need that constant, stable nutrient intake, and our body thrives on patterns. So you have a pattern of sleeping and eating and activity. All those things help it to not have stress, and the more we can follow that pattern, the better. So that will improve our hormone responses, our inflammation will reduce, and have better detox patterns and growth and repair. All right, so just to kind of recap all that section, when you think of your meal, what do you need in that meal? So every meal, 3 times a day. Your snacks are different. They don't need all of these things, but they still need some parts of it. But basically you want a protein, your non-starchy vegetable, your quality carbohydrate, your water, and make sure the timing's on. So when I go grocery shopping, that's how I structure my list. When I look at my day and how my meals are, that's how I structure my list. And if I'm trying to piece together something really quick, that's how I think. What's my protein? What's my veggie? What's my carb? And go through it like that. You asked at the beginning, what is real food? So we're going to talk about that. So if it could sit on a shelf for a year, should it sit in your body today? You can tell which foods are fresh because they spoil the fastest. You've probably all seen the joke about like the picture of the popular commercial food chain bun that gets set out and it just dries and it looks the same a year later. So if it's not going moldy and it's not spoiling, it's not healthy. So the bacteria know that too. And you can tell how good something is by how fast it spoils. So the least refined and processed is the best for your body. Real food will look, taste, smell, and feel like something that you harvest fresh. And even on that note, if you've ever grown your own beans or your own things like that, fresh ones, whole different ballgame. Like, they're amazing. Even if it's only been in the store for a year, which is not uncommon, it still is really different. So processed food, is it a friend or foe? Can it ever be helpful? Yes, it's convenient for storage and travel, but there is a nutritional cost. So it's not a foundation of the diet or for frequent use. And again, storing those grains and other natural foods like that is airtight and out of light and temperature changes in water, the better. When I create my food storage, like I want fresh fruits and vegetables in there, the way that you preserve most of those nutrients the best is freeze drying by far. Frozen is okay, but if you're having an emergency food storage and your power goes out, then it doesn't do so great in the freezer. You have to eat it really fast. It doesn't last you very long. So dehydrated is different. It will break down the nutrients more. And some people, their stomachs and their bodies don't do as well with that. And then when you add preservatives, like different chemicals and things like that, and now you're really processing it with those, then that's a whole nother level of, if you eat those on a regular basis, they're preservatives. What do they do to your body? They preserve you. So that's how you mummify yourself, and you start making processes not work as well as they should. And it has a toll. Your body has to detox those things. I mean, it looks like a party, but you can just look at it and your body's like, yeah, that's not food. I mean, is it plastic? Is it what? So how do you know if your food will love you back? Read the labels. Like, seriously, just look at what is in it. Does it look like real food? Can you pronounce it? Do you know what it is? The longer the list of things that are on it, then the more processed it is. If you want, I can share like a table of a study that was constructed to show you 4 different levels or classifications of processing. But basically, the more heat, pressure, or grinding, mechanical force is applied to it, the more processed it is. There is a category of natural processing where you're using salt and fermentation, and that's a lot less harmful. But still, if you eat a lot of salt stuff or fermented stuff and you have immune issues, then that can cause other problems. So, but long term, it's still a better option. So some foods will combine with our chemistry to temporarily make us feel really good. So we want to focus on food that will help us feel good tomorrow, not just right now. And so the reason for that is because they cause other chemicals to be produced in our body that feel really good. They're literally addictive drugs. So, for example, it can be, like it states here, alcohols, aldehydes, and opiates. And those don't even come from the food, but they come from your gut microbiome when it encounters these simplified foods. So really simple foods interact with our gut bacteria in a very harmful way. They found that the best gut bacteria are supported by those natural foods we've already talked about. The processed foods support the gut bacteria that produce the alcohols and aldehydes and opiates. And for someone that already has an immune system compromised and they have leaky brain, leaky gut, and leaky lungs, they're going to start ending up with more sensitivities to allergies and environmental chemicals. They get more brain inflammation, more behavioral issues. They get more gut issues because their immune system is broken down and all this stuff is flooding it, and it becomes like very addictive. They have to get that hit, and so they go crazy if they don't get their simplified sugars and processed foods. And so that's what happens with those types of addictions. So am I saying never eat this kind of stuff? Well, maybe if that's your choice, but I think we should have fun and we should be able to enjoy some things once in a while too, but on a level that makes sense. So how does that happen? So we want to make sure that when we do have indulgences, we make them as healthy as possible and it's not overpowering our self-will. If we're going crazy over food and it's controlling us, then there's something that's out of balance and it's wrong. If it's going to cause inflammation, so visual is fire, daggers, poison, that's what this stuff can cause for most people. And that can create that brain reward, which then influences your behavior. This science of processed food, they call it food engineering. Basically, they want to create hyper-palatable foods. So they create the perfect balance of salt, sugar, fat, and texture to make it so that you just crave that over and over and you can't stop eating it. So our favorite version of that we make that's healthy and homemade is when we make like homemade caramel popcorn, because you can get the perfect balance of like fat using butter or coconut oil, get it with the popcorn, add some salt, and then a homemade caramel to put on top of it, and it's amazing. So we already know that that's not something we want to do on a regular basis. And we also know that it's something that we want to limit in some way. So we just prepare enough for one evening. We don't make it for multiple times so that when we're done, it's gone. So we eat it all. Another thing that's produced when we eat these foods is dopamine, which is a feel-good neurotransmitter. We start craving that addiction as well. And then the natural opioids in the foods have the same action as morphine and heroin and cocaine and can create a high. And the rate of absorption of these is important because when that's absorbed so rapidly because it's already highly processed, you can think of processing as like almost a level of digestion. It's pre-digested, so it's absorbed even faster. That rate of absorption being so quick also spikes inflammation and causes other changes in the hormones and chemicals and our neurotransmitters in our body. So that's another element of why it's not great to use. You can temper some of that by having fiber, like from those vegetables and plant materials that we talked about, and protein and healthy fats prior to consuming this. Then that will slow down the absorption. So you don't want to do this first thing in the morning, but if you've had a good meal and you go and have a healthy indulgence not too often, then it's going to impact you less. So just find the joy of eating well. So you can still eat healthy and be indulgent. Like people are always like, oh, I don't eat healthy because you guys don't eat any fun foods. Like, well, your taste buds change, your sense of what is indulgent and what makes you feel good is different. And you learn to indulge in a way that's healthy. So find that balance that supports your wellness, and you can still have some enjoyment and pleasure. So I'm not a food hater. I just love good, real food. And so if we are going to have something that is a healthy indulgence, from a dessert standpoint or a treat, make it from scratch. You can make a lot better stuff and leave out a lot of the bad stuff. You can use it after your foundational needs are met, and as long as they're being met consistently, then once in a while an indulgence is not that big of a deal. Don't overwhelm yourselves. So be very mindful of how much you're eating and how often you're doing it. When it becomes no longer an indulgence that's healthy, but more of an addiction or a big thing that creates imbalance. Diets. So many different options. So the question is, does this stress my body or create a balance? And so some examples are keto, low carb, paleo, carnivore, intermittent fasting, anti-inflammatory, starch-based, vegetarian, detox or cleanse diets. So again, stress can drive adaptation. A lot of the diets, their claim is that, well, it's going to improve your levels of growth hormone, or your recycling of this thing, and it's improving your genes, and all these different aspects, but they lose sight of moderation to the point that they're creating other imbalances. And if you're stressing your body all the time and not letting it just catch up and thrive, then you're also missing the boat. So, for some people, certain kinds of options along those lines could be helpful, but you need to keep it reasonable. And if your body's already stressed from other mental, emotional stress or physical stresses or other things going on, that's another thing that raises your level of your threat bucket, and you need to take that into account before you add a diet that's going to also stress you. So there's a lot of different aspects to that. And that's very individual. So it depends on your metabolic imbalance. If you have autoimmune conditions, genetic factors, environment, or your adrenals healthy is a big one for anything that's low carb or fasting or keto, paleo, that kind of stuff. So let's kind of go through a couple. So an anti-inflammatory diet we hear a lot about. There's kind of like this classic blueprint of what an anti-inflammatory diet is. But then I hear people doing that, and that's all they do all the time. That's not what it was designed for. You're just so limited in what you're eating. That's not healthy. You need that abundance of different foods, different types of plants. So initially, it can be helpful to remove highly reactive foods, and that's very individual for a person. We do a blood test to find out what foods their immune system is reacting to. But once we get the system healed and the immune system calmed down, we should be able to gradually reintroduce them without problems for most foods. Not always all of them, but a majority of them. And they would be back out to a pretty regular selection of normal foods. So that needs to be a very strategic, temporary strategy. And it still needs to follow those 5 things that you include with each meal. All right, there are these fringe foods. So you want to moderate their usage. And again, it's case by case based on the person and their immune system. But it can have a tendency to drive imbalance if it's used too often or too much. Genetics and the immune profile are huge with that. So that's where we get into stuff like soy, corn, peanuts, dairy, grains, all that stuff. And then how their food is grown and processed also plays a role. How healthy was the soil? Were they using lots of chemicals? Was it a genetically modified food? All those things need to be taken into account. But you do it based on your level of concern because of your individual needs, plus your finances. All that has to be taken into account, what makes sense for you. Because if you're just stressing yourself out in another way, that's not healthy either. Then the individual adaptation is huge. Everyone's chemistry is so different, and that's why one person has their friend and they did all this and it made them healthy and feel good, but then it doesn't work for them. And so there are lots of factors from your genetics, the environment you're in, your stress, your microbiome. They have done studies on your microbiome that show that, like, if you have, say, grandkids that go to daycare and you're the grandparent, then whatever germs they're interacting with will come home and interact with you. And that could be good, it could be bad, depending on your level of immune system adaptation and where you're at. So if you're exposed to more, things like that and your system's in a good place, then that can be a healthy thing. But if you're just always getting sick because of it, then that can drive other problems. But we all share our germs and bacteria, which is kind of interesting. Where do supplements fit in? So nowadays there's just so much change in our genetics and in the way the food is raised and all those elements together that I just haven't found a way to just get all the nutrients we need from food. I think in a perfect world we could, but we don't live in a perfect world. We don't have perfect bodies. And so we need support. And that's where supplements come in. But there isn't just like a bundle of supplements I'm going to give you. and you take those and you're good. It has to be customized to, again, your chemistry, your needs, and a very specific level. So we get so specific, we look at a specific brand, a specific product with a specific dose for each specific person, and then their needs are going to change each month, because where they started is going to be different if they're opening up certain chemical processes through their enzymes and other things happening in their body. Then the next month they aren't going to need some of those other things, but they might need something else. Their body could be ready for something new and heal in another way. So we evolve that as we go. And that's the holistic methylation process, where we test for supplements and then find what you need. So it doesn't replace food either. You can't just take supplements and not worry about your food, but this helps bridge that gap with all those changes that we've talked about. And then as far as foods and hormones go, what if every bite you eat sends a hormone signal? And it does. So that's another reason why we can't just do calories in, calories out. So what we eat will change how we regulate our thyroid, our insulin, cortisol, and sex hormones. And it influences our cell signaling, so how the cells talk to each other. And it is also a fuel for chemical processes. It's also a building block for the hormones and neurotransmitters, brain tissue, endocrine glands, and the microbiome. So if we don't have those building blocks, then those hormone systems fail as well. Hormones have to have cholesterol. And so we need healthy cholesterol. And there are these people that just avoid all cholesterol because cholesterol in a blood test is bad, and that's not how it works. So there's healthy cholesterol and there's unhealthy cholesterol, and the way that your body regulates that, we need to provide it with good, healthy cholesterol. If we don't, it can try and make its own, but it's not optimized for what we need. So that's why food is so important for balancing hormones. So long before you start taking hormones, you want to make sure this is all balanced. So insulin is an example. So what causes your daily energy crashes? Inflammation is stress. And so when you get insulin spikes, especially from refined or processed sugars, then you get a massive imbalance in inflammation and tons of inflammation. And insulin has a whole host of other things it does in your body that signals, storage of energy and stuff like that, and creates other problems. But it's not all bad. We just need the right amounts at the right times. But when we have these constant surges, then it's really bad. Caffeine also adds more stress to our bodies. And so that can also put you into a fight or flight state and make your body want to just hold on to energy. Because when we're stressed, the response is we need energy storage. And so that's what cortisol and other things that happen when we're stressed does for us. It's kind of like, I'm in this emergency system. I don't have time to process energy, but I might need some later, so I'm just going to convert it to fat. So you need to have balanced meals with real food. That helps to stabilize our blood sugar and our insulin. So insulin itself can be inflammatory if it's not managed properly, and that gives us balance. Cortisol and adrenaline are another one. So again, just that whole stress state, it feels good at first. And that's why a lot of people that go on highly restrictive diets or juice fasts and they're missing out on major categories of nutrients feel better, because they're missing out on all that. And so at first it's going to feel good. You start breaking down your own chemicals in your own body tissues, feels good. You get more of the stress and adrenaline. It feels good initially. People are like, oh, I feel so good on this juice fast. It's because they're in this massive stress state. And so if they keep doing that, then it will create more balance. And it's caused by diet extremes, exercise extremes, mental, emotional stresses, sleep issues, pregnancy, hormone shifts, environmental toxins, illness, injury, surgery. All of those can imbalance our cortisol and adrenaline. So as far as just losing weight or gaining weight for some people, why does some of those only help temporarily? We've addressed that considerably throughout this whole class, but basically we need that balance. And so we need to learn those long-term habits for true balance. And that when we have healthy cells, then we get healthy habits, then we have a healthy metabolism. So the whole idea of calories in versus calories out is just not a valid strategy, especially for long-term health. There are certain scenarios where it can be useful in like temporary situations, but generally speaking, it's not what we want to target. If you could remember one thing today, what should it be? So food is information for your cells. So what are you telling your body? make it good information. If you love good food, you'll love yourself. Some resources to help you. So we can talk about, of course, the personalized supplements, the metabolic and immune reset. This is a free handout. If you want to scan that QR code, it'll give you a free 7-day meal plan with key principles and recipes in it. And so enjoy that. And that again is, it has a lot of the basics we talked about, but it has recipes geared for someone doing an anti-inflammatory diet. So it's also not like the end all be all. It's an example of how to eat when you're on an anti-inflammatory diet. So we've talked about what you can start with now. That wraps it up. Thanks for coming tonight. Hope we answered some questions and gave you some good ideas of how you can move forward. Are there any other questions about nutrition that you wish someone would finally answer clearly?
What are those drugs called for losing weight that people are taking?
Well, that's like just changing how much energy your body and your cells have available. So it's just another way of starving your body without having to do it at your personal motivation level, your conscious control level. It's just forcing your body to absorb less of the energy that you are eating. It's similar to the idea of, let's restrict the stomach and do a surgery, like a bariatric surgery or something, to make it so your stomach just can't hold as much food. It'll be a similar type of result, but on a different level of the physiology.
How do you know how much you need to eat?
Well, your body can manage quite a large range. There are people that say you need half of your body weight in ounces of meat per day. So, like if I weighed, 200 pounds, then I need like 100 ounces of protein. Some people say that's based on activity level. So, like if you're a strength athlete or an endurance athlete, or you're using up your own internal proteins faster, then you need to supply them at a higher level. So there's that level to watch out for. Some people say, though, that eating them at that level is really hard on your kidneys. So you have to balance it out with, what your energy demands are, what your body and your lifestyle is trying to accomplish each day, and then balance it according to that. So
Ounces or
in grams,
grams? Okay.
sorry, yeah.
And
So if you do it in grams, then it's per 1 gram of protein per every half of your body weight. In kilograms is a gram of protein. Yeah.
I'm not, I don't love meat. And so, tofu, I'll eat meat occasionally. I like meat if it's deep fried
Mm-hmm.
and a burger with an onion ring on top of it.
Yeah.
Like, then I like it. So
Yeah.
finding that balance between plants and
Mm-hmm.
choking down.
Mm-hmm. Most people are gonna be all right if they're eating, like 3 to 4 ounces per meal. In some cases, you could probably reduce that even a little bit more. I think if you're not like super active, you're not really into bodybuilding or a lot of sport usage of protein. But yeah, 3 to 4 ounces is the typical rule. You have other things that come along with meats, just in terms of genetically. Some people have a hard time processing them and they get too high of uric acid levels with them. So then it's advantageous for them to substitute out some meals here and there to just be vegan rather than have meat sources, because it helps them reduce their uric acid levels. So I'm that way. So most of my breakfasts I usually do without meat, but if my wife makes some eggs, I'll have an egg or two once in a while. So it's not a big deal, but you kind of learn that balance of, when do I start to feel like that level of, inflammation from the uric acid's too high or not? And you just start to learn to get a sense of that.
So, like, some doctors will say that lectins aren't good for you.
So lectins typically are considered to be in grains, beans, potatoes, and dairy. And if you cook foods, then that helps break lectins down. So that would be one way to work with that. The other thing is, I think that if you're getting a good balance of the right nutrients, that your body can manage some level of lectins. I've worked with people on reducing sensitivity to lectins through a variety of ways. You can do energetic techniques, but I found that those really aren't even necessary if you're just working on balancing the cells and getting them healthy. The lectins causing damage is also a function of your immune system and how healthy your immune system is. So if you can balance out the immune cells, then there's less likely that you're going to have reactivity and damage to them in the gut in the first place.
Tomatoes, you just cook them.
You could. You can still eat raw tomatoes. I'm not super like uptight about lectins. I'm not one of those guys that says, "Oh, avoid all lectins." I think if you have a healthy, balanced diet, what I've seen is that they're a non-issue. In my life, I've been really sick, and there were times that lectins bothered me. But as I worked on supporting my underlying cellular health and really optimizing that, I don't even think twice about it anymore. So there may be a time and a place for someone to be careful of them, but it's not a long-term strategy. Like there's so many foods that have those in them that trying to avoid all of them is just ridiculous. And I believe that all plants have been in the natural healthy form are good for us.
What about oxalates?
Same thing.
Same thing.
Yep. If you support the right genetic pathways, your body can manage and handle oxalates just fine.
Is there fruits that are better than other fruits?
I'm not a food hater. I love all food. So if you get an unrefined, unprocessed, clean fruit, go for it. Are some fruits going to have other benefits than others? Yeah, but I don't really get into that. Just eat a variety. So bananas have the highest glycemic index. Does that mean I avoid bananas? No, I just don't use them all the time, and I don't eat like 10 at a time. So you just moderate how much and how often you're using them. It is wise to limit your fruit intake to just a few per day rather than really chowing down on fruit every day.
Brain fog be a function of low blood sugar?
Oh yeah, that's one of the first signs.
Is there like a certain amount that we should eat in the morning? I'm up at 5:30 and out there. A handful of nuts going to be enough to like break that body up, or do I need try and eat
Right. So for people that are just going to wake up early, go exercise, and then come home, then they can eat breakfast, then they can do a snack. But if it's full on, you need a meal because it's going to be a while till you get back home, then you need a meal. Yeah. So I mean, it's different for how much that meal contains for everyone, but I mean, generally speaking, most of us need in the order of somewhere around 2,200 to 2,500 calories a day. So kind of divide that in thirds. And that's a good way to do it. If it's inconvenient to do that much at the very first, you can still make up for some of that at lunchtime or dinner time. But yeah.
So eating the good foods at 22 or 2,500 calories, you're actually not going to gain the weight.
If your body's balanced metabolically, you'll be fine. Otherwise, you may need to increase your activity levels too, because not having enough activity can also be a cause of weight gain and make it so that you could be under eating but still gaining weight because you're not active enough. So you want to increase your eating and your activity, and that increases your metabolism and helps it balance itself. If we don't move enough or we don't eat enough, that will reduce our metabolism. It'll go into a fight or flight state, then we just hold on to calories.
about like protein powders?
I mean, even smoothies is a whole topic, but basically, so there could be a time and place for it, but it shouldn't be a regular habit. And the reason for that is just there are lots of reasons why those shortcuts aren't as healthy for your body. So a protein powder, no matter who makes it, is still a highly refined and processed food. And so we always do best with the least refined and least processed food. But sometimes we're in a hurry, we gotta do something. That's fine, I get it, but that shouldn't be every day. It might be once a week, ideally maybe once or twice a month. I know. And then with smoothies, if you remember the slide that shows how digestion works, a lot of the things happening down here start because we're chewing our food. And so if we're just drinking something really fast, it doesn't give your body time to prepare properly for that. And so mentally, physically, it just doesn't help support that system ideally. The gut microbiome changes and all of that when we chew our food. And so we need to start with chewing stuff. So you could make a smoothie bowl where you add some nuts or other seeds or something you have to chew with it. I like to do the smoothies when I have like roasted vegetables, some nuts, maybe some nut butter as well, maybe some fruit that's whole fruit, and then I dump the smoothie in it. So that's my idea of a smoothie. But yeah, so there are ways to get around it, or you could gonna have your smoothie with your vegetables and your fruit and stuff in it, but let's cook some eggs and eat those first and then have the smoothie. So there are tricks you can do to make it less impactful that way, and you still just don't want to do it all the time.
Having bone broth on a regular basis.
Like homemade bone broth, it's great. Yeah, most people would do really well with that. If you look at, so in microbiology in school, it was funny because they give us these petri dishes and we grow bacterial cultures on them. And if you ask what's in it, they call it agar. That's the medium that you grow the bacteria on. Well, what's agar? It's bone broth. It's a broth that they've made because it's highly nutritious. And so if you're bathing your cells in that all the time, just like the cells in the petri dish, helps your body grow and nourishes it. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why a lot of healing diets will start with a bone broth.
What about the bone broth and the powders that you buy?
Now it's more processed at some level. So, it's how much processing, we don't know. Like, did they have to heat it to package it, or, what kind of mechanical processes were in it? And then it's stored. So it's still just not as fresh. So could it still be good or okay? Yes. But every step of processing you add to that is going to reduce it somewhat.
How does that apply to like dried beans
Mhm.
or wild rice?
Yeah. So basically, the longer they're stored, the more nutrients are going to be lost out of it. And how you store them is important. So, like, ideally avoiding light and air. Because if you want to break something down, heat, light, and air, water, some people add to that list, will break things down. So it needs to be dry, stable temperature, not exposed to light to not break down. And since those foods are designed to be more stored like that, then it's different. So you can still store some of them for a certain amount of time, but over time, at some point, it is still going to break down and not be good anymore. But it will have a longer natural shelf life without preservatives, which is good.
Thoughts on dairy?
Depends on the person and their immune system. Some people have dairy sensitivities that makes it so they need to avoid it more carefully on a consistent basis, especially like severe Hashimoto's cases or other things like that. But generally speaking, it's just like any other animal product. The cleaner it is, how it was raised, the better it will be for you. And it's still not something you want to use on a very high level. So there's a level of moderation and balance with that. So I'll use like almond milk most of the time. Sometimes I use milk. I'm not like totally anti-milk, but then we try and get more organic or whatever. And then just limit how often we're using it. It's not a staple. So the clean meats and the nuts and seeds and the clean vegetables, that's kind of more the staple. So
I don't understand what the methylation process is.
okay, so they call it the holistic methylation process, but methylation just refers to one specific set of chemical processes that happens in your body. For example, a methyl group is a carbon and 3 hydrogens. If you've had any biology or chemistry, then you kind of understand, like, they've got the carbon, you branch it out, it's got 3 hydrogens attached to it. That's a methyl group. For your body to detox efficiently, it has to be able to transfer a methyl group from something that's already inside your body and your cells to this compound. And then because it's attached it to that compound, now your body can get rid of it. And so that's the essential methylation process. But that's one example of, like, there are thousands of enzymes that we have in our body that do different chemical processes. And so the holistic methylation process is designed to help all of those different processes be optimized for your genetics and your chemistry. So another really common one is like COMT gene. It helps with getting rid of old hormones and detoxing hormones. And so that has a lot to do with, adrenaline, cortisol, epinephrine, all of your sex hormones, stuff like that. And you have to be able to detox them through that COMT process. We have a vitamin D receptor that helps us with hormones and balance of our immune system. So that's another gene that we have to work with the enzymes in that and optimize those pathways. So there are lots of different ones encompassed in the methylation process. So like if you need a vitamin D, for example, then we'll find the specific brand and how much you need for where you're at versus, just take any vitamin D, So there are lots of different brands, and they all might have 10 high quality brands, but your body just wants one of them. So those are the things we check.
Do you use muscle testing for that?
We do. You can also get a genetic test that backs it up, but it's still driven by what your body specifically is testing for that way. But it's not just a typical, like, I've done a lot of different processes for muscle testing for supplements, and most of them haven't done anything for me. Some of them I got temporary improvement, and then things just started shifting back or worse still. And so this was the first process I found that's actually helped me to heal on a deep level. And that's because they use these other kits that have, little vials that represent different parts of the genetic processes and all these enzymes we're talking about. Even more specific, because I'm NAT certified as well. Yeah, so it's even more specific processes. And so you have kind of a template that you can test your body chemistry against and then find what balances out those imbalances. And then it takes it to a lot deeper level.
Okay, so with the food and hormones
Mhm.
and perimenopause
Mhm.
and like HRT, that like this would be the first step, and then maybe hold off on
Mhm.
kind of get a good foundation.
Oh yeah. Yep. I can't tell you how many clients I've had that had major hormone imbalances, and all we did was, give them a healthy diet. We worked through an elimination process. We got their immune system reset, and then the right supplements, and then their hormones totally shifted. They had normal cycles again, or they were able to finally get pregnant, or whatever else. A really simple example, like sex hormones balance, starts with diet. So for guys, a really easy example is if we have blood sugar imbalances and we have excess tissue like fat tissue, then there's an elevation of an enzyme called aromatase. And what aromatase does is it takes our sex hormones and it converts them so that they're no longer available. And so it reduces our testosterone levels and it makes it so that we just gain even more weight. And so a lot of guys will go and take testosterone, but then they have high levels of aromatase that converts that testosterone. Actually, it converts it into estrogen. And then it, just perpetuates the fat storage and, the change in the sexual function. So,
Too much estrogen can cause
mhm. In a lot of different ways that any imbalance of things like that can cause problems. So there's another scenario where, like for women that have too much fat tissue and their insulin levels are out of balance, that changes their estrogen levels and makes them get more testosterone. So it's kind of ironic, but it's a different process, but it still creates the opposite effect of what I just described. So that's a PCOS pattern.
I got a question about zeolite being used to detox. Is that good on a regular basis or just do it periodically?
I would just do that on an individual basis and see if that's something that your body tests that it wants. Because again, detoxing is something your cells should do for themselves without a lot of external support other than just the right nutrition to help them work properly. And then you'll get a very gentle, slower detox than trying to use something externally that really stirs up a lot of stuff. Having binders in some cases is necessary, but not too often. And it's far overrated to detox than it is to actually support healthy nutrition from a cellular level from the inside out. So it's not something I would use much, if in some cases never, and very little in other cases when it seems appropriate. Before I learned all of this, I would have people on these really strict detox protocols and would find out they have mold in their house and would go after that and would use all these binders and things to like catch the toxins from the molds and help clean out the molds and use antimicrobials and all this stuff. And some people it helped, some people it didn't, but most people it just stressed them out and it made their chemistry even more on edge. And so, yeah, that's when I found the holistic methylation process. And if somebody has mold issues, it's as long as it's not like a blatant massive exposure, it's a non-issue. Your body can handle it as long as you support your nutrition and your cells from the inside out.
Microbiome, probiotic supplements.
We don't use a lot of those. Very rarely will I recommend a probiotic or a prebiotic because it should be coming primarily through your nutrition. If you're eating 30 or more different good plant foods per week, then you're going to support your gut microbiome on a much higher level than any supplement will. In fact, the new studies show that if you've had to use antibiotics for something, the best way to restore it isn't taking probiotics. It's eating at least 30 or more different plant foods per week.
Are there certain plant foods that are promoting probiotic?
All will to some extent, but there are some that promote certain types of bacteria more than others. But again, eating a variety is really important. And so that's what we focus on rather than trying to be really super hyper specific about supplements and things you can use that way. There are some companies that have started making supplements for that, but again, it's just best to get it through your nutrition.